Well, finally, we get to share something with audiences around the world. And Jim, I want to start with you with a question from King Kong Cali in the UK.
Okay.
What brought your
Really,
attention?
King Kong?
That's his username. What brought your attention to the manga itself, and what made you decide to turn it into a movie?
Well, it's an interesting history going back, I'd have to say at this point, almost 20 years. Guillermo del Toro, who's a very good friend of mine, director, Shape of Water, all that stuff, turned me on to the anime. And it was a short anime that had been done from a kind of a mashup of the first couple of books of Alita Battle Angel. That's Yukito Kishiro's manga, which we've all been living with for the last few years. And I love the anime just for its kind of poignant, simple story. And then I went out and I researched. I read all the books. I think there were 9 or 10 books at that time. And we decided to get the rights to it and start to develop it as a film. And it was for me to direct. But then, you know, I went through a few iterations of the script, and I wound up doing Avatar instead. And it was it was literally practically a coin toss. We were developing them both in parallel, and I thought I was going to do Alita, and then Avatar pulled ahead. And so then, you know, a few years after that, Robert and I were hanging out. And we'd just been hanging out for like 3 hours, just gossiping and being pals.
Hang out.
We hang out, yeah. And so he's getting in his car, you know, and the car door's about to close, and he says, "So you got anything?" You know, like an afterthought, total afterthought. And in a split second, I thought, I'm not going to get a chance to do Battle Angel for a long time. So I'm doing all these Avatar sequels. So I handed it to him, handed him the baton.
Yeah, that's
the rest is history.
You mostly do material that you create yourself, but you saw something in the character and in the world that made you say, you know what, I want to adapt that, which I thought was very interesting, which made me interested in the project too.
Right, and then you adapted my adaptation, and that
adapted
became the shooting script. You wrote the shooting script.
And what I saw about it was very unique. It was similar to some of your other, you know, like Sarah Connor and Ripley, but instead of someone with a very heartfelt character finding their warrior spirit, this had the reverse twist, which is someone who had a warrior spirit already and had to discover her heart. And, I could see immediately why you responded to it, and that's what got me wanting to do it.
That brings us to a question from Lewis from Yorkshire. Robert, what was the experience like collaborating with director James Cameron Elita? A huge fan of your work and very excited for the film. Keep rocking.
Well, I mean,
describe the living hell of our creative process.
I went to school, first of all, on Jim's movies. When I was dreaming about making movies, he was already doing it. And I was studying Terminator and The Abyss and Aliens and going to school on all of that. And then I met Jim, and I became friends over 20 years ago. And we're into 3D and into doing multiple jobs on the set, so we kind of had a kinship in how we like to do things. But I always looked up to him as someone who's very masterful because of the mastery that he had accomplished by always pushing the envelope and very high-tech filmmaking that was always surrounded only a story that was purely about character and heart. So he had something that no one else had. So you try to emulate guys like that. And we tried to work together for many years, around times before Sin City on one project, and then later on something else, because we enjoyed each other's company and vision of what we do. But me always knowing I would be learning from him more than he would ever learn from me.
Well, this is not quite true, because I've been going to school on you for years as well. I mean, Sin City for sure, absolutely. I mean, your whole deconstructed way of working against green screen and all that, so graphic and powerful. I mean, you just blew it up with that. So I just knew it was going to be a fertile, you know, kind of collaboration. And I think, you know, looking back on it now, I think we can both say that it was pretty satisfying, because you know, I left you alone on the set. You know, you're a big boy, you know how to direct a movie. I came down once just to say hi so the actors knew I actually was on the film.
And I remember
one day, right?
We were
both
in
shots that day too, so it actually
that's true.
really motivated to have you there.
We were in Video
often.
Village,
Yeah.
and I remember I was standing there next to you, and we were watching the screen as they were setting up the next thing, and you went, "I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go." I was like, really? And you're like, yeah, if I know when to leave now before I start touching lights. And I loved that. I'm like,
exactly.
That's it. And he left.
If I stay a minute longer, I'm going to start suggesting shit.
I know there were times during the production where you maybe would ping Jim an email, even though he wasn't on the set, where you'd send him an email and What type of?
We got way into the weeds early on in the process. Really, he would come down to Austin, I would come up, and we would discuss it. And then when I was on the set, I could even email him a question, hoping he'd have some time to just take a look at it. Within a couple of hours, he'd send me back long answers, very detailed, very genuine. I have a whole side, Word document that's probably like over a couple hundred pages now, just what I learned from Jim. He teaches you. He teaches you as you go, and you get to learn things that you never did before. One of the main things he taught me day one in Jim Cameron's science fiction filmmaking class was, and this was his approach to movies, and it just clicks and it suddenly makes sense, is that you're going to have a very fantastical world and a science fiction world, and the audience is going to believe in that world. You have to ground everything. Everything has to ground in a reality. And that's totally different from anything that I ever do.
Right.
So I like immediately.
Because you go way out to
I
the
go
edge.
way out to the
Yeah.
edge, and
Yeah.
it's like totally makes sense why you can buy into the most extreme sci-fi concepts in his films. And so we strove for that realism.
And the
Like when
realism
she-
starts with character.
With
exactly.
character,
Rosa.
and with
Yeah.
And,
casting.
so Rosa, a question for you from India, from Susmit in India. How challenging was it for you to play the role of Alita, and how did you prepare yourself for the role?
How did I prepare myself for the role? Well, I was lucky enough to have you guys to support me in doing that. I remember, Jim, you sent an email to Robert, said we should get her into training right now, which we were about 6 months out, so that you don't, get 2 takes out of her, and then she's spent. And I really,
So that you could kick
took that, and I do, and I now I
And
do
you do.
kick ass.
She does.
But it's true. Even pretending to be Alita was exhausting because she's so capable. Her body is, it's a machine. So it's even pretending to be her, was exhausting, and it challenged me to the nth degree. I mean, you guys had me in training with Keith Hirabayashi, who I adore, who taught me that martial arts is not only physical strength, but also balancing and finding harmony within yourself, finding your chi, harnessing the tiger, not just being the tiger. And I studied with him 2 hours every day, 5 days a week, and I was transformed. When I walked in there, I was made out of croissants. You had a big hand in shaping my diet, which I now carry on.
We're still working on that.
And it was so helpful that we had the previs, the artwork that you guys put together, so that I could start to understand her movements, and because she has a very unique movement, and the way that she stands, and her physical nature is very, otherworldly. So that was challenging, getting into shape, getting strong, and I felt strong.
Yeah.
And it was
And
also
you acted-
about that.
you acted
yes,
that
and
strength.
it comes from that.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen, one doesn't happen without the other. When you are on a physical journey, transforming into a character, that other part is also in training.
And I think another thing you did was you immersed yourself in the graphic novels that Kishiro wrote. And I know that because when Kishiro came and visited us on the set, you were up there, can you autograph
my dog-eared, all of the tab stickers, and I had this, your process calls to you every movie you do, every project you do, your process becomes a little different. Obviously with the performance capture suit, that was another part of it, but one interesting part about it is that I printed out every single page of the first book, of Gundam, and I colored it, because I wanted to spend time with her. I had already read the books.
That's fantastic.
I had already done
I
the
never thought
notes.
of that.
I had already read your 5-page declaration on Alita, which, by the way, you could win WGA awards for as emails. I mean, there's a reason there's a separate folder. But I spent time with her, and I wanted to care about her as much as you guys do. You guys, especially you guys.
Yeah.
You spent so much time with her and caring about her, and I like the way you say it. We needed to find the right people to raise her together.
Yeah.
And
we
so that
have
was a challenge.
We have the benefit now of having seen the film. We live with it, but we've seen it, and we see how you are the living, beating heart center of the movie. And we knew that very early on, that you were kind of our ace in the hole, that the visual effects would be big and expensive and spectacular and all that, but it all focuses on you.
Well, that's what I like about both of you. It's, for me, being around you two and watching your films and going to your schools of making film, you know, you both are engineering on the site. You know what I mean? Like it makes, it's not surprising to me that you have Weta, because they do the same thing.
Yeah.
They're on set and they're creating in the moment. And you know, when I watch, you know, behind the scenes of Sin City and how you use the black and white against the green screen, it's just, it's brilliant. And I wanted to be a part of that. And when I see Alita on the screen, I see myself. And you both care so much about the acting. It's very important.
So Robert,
Yeah.
in the casting process, what is it about, this is from Lizzie in Mexico City, what gave Rosa the edge over all the other actresses that you auditioned?
She absolutely affected me the moment she came in and did the scenes. I was affected in a way I had never been in just a casting room, you know, and I watched the tape afterwards, and sure enough, it happened again then. I even jumped the gun a little and sent it immediately to Jim, thinking, you know, we still have a lot of people to see, but if we had to shoot tomorrow, this is very promising. What do you think about this?
Yeah.
You remember your reaction?
Yeah, I said, we're done. You know? And Robert said, whoa, 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 slow down, slow down. I still have to see this person, this person, this person. It's like, okay, you can see them, but we're going to cast her.
Yeah, I mean, and this process, this performance capture that you guys do, I mean, we say it at the beginning, but I didn't really know from experience that the performance of the actor is truly, it's one-to-one throughout, all the way through, and drives it. And so I knew the casting would be important, but now that I've been through the process, you really see every nuance of her performance, down to the sweat on her eye on the set that day in the character, which helps the technology go away, because at the end of the day, this has to be about a character that we really believe is there and that is real as any other character, which is why we shot it very grounded and very real, with real actors on real sets, so that the process doesn't pull you out of the movie.
Right.
And then you can go with the spectacle that's being presented and the very heartfelt journey that's being presented.
Well, when you are up for a role that's completely in performance capture, I remember, by the way, I only say performance capture, and I remember in the beginning I would say motion capture, you know, because that's what you hear a lot. Mocap, the buzzword of mocap, and I remember you going, it's performance capture. I'm like, okay. But as I went along the process, I was like, this is performance capture. And when I saw the bits and pieces that were starting to be edited, I was like, she's more human than human. Yeah. When I see her, that's what I feel. I feel it's not jarring in the sense it's like, whoa, like this is a crazy trick, but it's me. And when I first, you know, got the role and I'm like, I'm wondering how much of my performance is going to be there, because as an artist, especially
concern,
us as artists, we're very protective over our craft. And when I saw it, I was even more impressed, because I was like, it's me. And you even put things on her face that are on my face that I wish weren't on my face. She's so me, and
It's amazing when you watch the film how quickly you forget that you can't possibly be real.
Yeah.
Because your eyes are so big and your face is so heart-shaped, and it's a very stylized look, which comes right from the manga. You're a living manga character. I would say in the first couple minutes, you just forget about it, and you're watching Alita. Alita becomes a person.
Yeah, and you're with her.
Yeah.
You want to be with her.
Yeah, and you forget about it. You have to remind yourself that visual effects are involved.
So Robert,
It's beautiful.
from Helmet in Germany, other than Rosa, you have a great cast.
Yeah.
Tell us about the rest of the cast.
Oh my gosh, we got, you know, Christoph Waltz right off the bat, somebody that, you know, I've known through Quentin's movies, but always wanted to work with. And when I started imagining him rereading the script with him in mind, it's like, oh my God, we have to get Christoph.
Yeah.
He would give all of these, you know, even scenes about technology, so much weight and heart that would disappear. And you're now just listening to someone who's really passionate about what they do, and who's passionate about raising this daughter in this crazy world, a daughter who has a lot of power. And what do you do with that power, and how do you direct that power and not abuse it? I mean, it's a very timeless story that just ends up being very timely right now.
And the father-daughter love story is at least as strong as the boy-girl love story.
Yeah. I mean, that was the most powerful for me. I was so close with my father that this was an amazing cathartic experience. You know, I get to relive that relationship, that very special bond. I mean, the rest of the cast, for me, I'm a craft nerd. I love this. I love what I do, and I love the craft. And so to work with so many, I want to say character actors, but all good actors are character actors. I mean, But you have all of these amazing, I was like a kid in a candy store.
Mahershala,
Jackie
Jennifer.
Earl Haley,
Yeah. Oh,
Jennifer
right.
Connelly, newcomer Keean Johnson,
Yeah,
who just wowed all of us.
he's going to steal everybody's hearts.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hiro from Japan
Hi, Hiro.
wants to know, what can you tell us about Keean?
Keean
Come on.
is a
just
brilliant,
good kisser.
good kisser. Sophia, if you're watching, you know. Keean is so open. Keean is such a kind, curious person. He emanates positivity. He's always looking for the silver lining. He's never down. And working with someone for months and months and months, and you're in the process, and I'm in the suit. You want to have someone on your side that's like that, who's just full of life and buoyant and just wants to, get really good at this. And he is really good at this. He has such raw ability, and he's hot. And like that's the whole thing.
Dreamer aspect of it.
Yeah,
is
he's a
very much like
dreamer.
Hugo.
Yeah.
He's a photographer. He's a dancer. He's been dancing since he was 9. He's a full-blown artist, but he's also like not cynical at all, which is so hard to
You
find
have
in
to
this
find
town.
a young man, because that's Alita. That's the character matched up with the character of Alita. So to find a young man who's that focused and that just sort of pure of heart, yet has a very focused mind. He came from Broadway. I mean, he has a
Billy Elliot
hard
on
work,
Broadway, I mean.
discipline, work ethic. I was just amazed by the guy, and I knew that he would really deliver for us.
Well, we're on Alita's journey, and so we see everything through her big brown eyes.
Right.
We see the world through her eyes. We see Hugo through her eyes. And we have to we have to see how she can so quickly fall in love with him. We
Right.
have to believe in that. And I think Keean brings that
And
quality.
I remember there was the balance of bad boy versus,
Right.
vulnerable boy. And
He's also a dark character.
yes, and so you had to find that balance,
That's right.
which is,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I don't wish casting on anybody because it seems so hard to me. It's a
Yeah.
specific
Well,
talent.
You go for someone who has that heart, because you can
Yeah.
find people who have the dark quality,
But you can't get the heart.
but then you won't feel the
Yeah.
heart aspect.
So another
Yeah.
role that we had to cast on this film that you sometimes don't on your other movies is a composer.
Yeah.
We have a question, Antoine in South Africa. What made you decide on Junkie XL to compose the score?
Well, I
The
a
name.
lot of times
I
compose,
know, I mean,
a
come on,
lot
it's
of
punk
times
rock.
compose my own music, but only because I've run out of money by that point. I've always wanted to
you
hire.
always
place.
you always compose your own music.
always
This is
run
the
out of
first
money.
time you worked with a composer, right?
Sometimes I've worked with some composers before where they've co-composed stuff
Right.
with me. But this was Junkie. I heard his score for Fury Road.
Yeah.
We talked about it after we saw Fury Road. We were both blown away by
Yeah.
not just George Miller's work, but the music.
Yeah.
Propulsive, action.
Galloping score.
But
Yeah.
the heart theme of the Sorrows theme was just so fantastic, and I thought he could bring the motorball aspect of Alita. He can bring the battle and the angel, to this.
Yes.
So I met with him and we got along great. He's got such a great ear and just knows how to construct music that can just both drive a sequence and yet have you dream about a character and a world.
Must be tough
Just
for
with a
him
few
working with a director who's also a
composer,
composer
yeah.
and musician, and
I think it's easier because you speak that language too. I mean,
Right.
and you don't really even need to, you don't have to be a composer to talk to another composer. You're just talking purely about story.
Yeah.
But you can then talk about what kind of chord structure we're looking at, what kind of musicality we're looking for, what's kind of simplicity in its themes are we looking for, so that they can come together. Because you've done the job. You've had to string a movie together and make it feel like a cohesive whole with notes. And but I tend to let him write, and then I just respond. And my response is usually picking my jaw up off the
And Alita's theme, when we hear it, when
It's so beautiful.
in
that
the
theme.
clips we showed,
Yeah.
and you hear Alita's theme in this very, very profound moment. It's made the hair on my neck stand up. It was so brilliant, and it made me think this is Alita.
Yeah.
Like, it really did.
So beyond that, though, there's a whole world to Alita. And we have a question from Philippe in France, Jim. Could you tell us more about
Bonjour, Philippe.
Can you tell us more about the mythology of Alita?
Well, Alita is a story that takes place in the future of a future. So our future went along technological progression up to a point, and then it went off a cliff in what's called the fall. which is an apocalypse that basically devastated the Earth's population, and the survivors kind of collapsed to the one remaining city, the one remaining sky city of Zalem. And so hopefully, if this film makes money, we'll go on and we'll continue the story. And the story plays out across a number of, as Jackie Earle Haley's character says, worlds above worlds above worlds. And so you have the underworld, where his character's from, and then you have the world of Iron City, which is on the ground, and then you've got the world of Zalem, which is the shining city in the sky that everybody wants to get to. So if you thought of it as the movie takes place in Tijuana and you're looking over the border at the skyscrapers of San Diego the entire time, wondering what's there in the promised land.
That's right.
That's what this film is about. That's what Hugo's dream is, to go to Zalem. Then above Zalem, there are other worlds above that as well, which we won't discuss until we get to the line. If we're so lucky as to make another one.
Such an expansive universe that they could go on.
It's a big universe. Yeah.
Almost as much as the Avatars.
Yeah, actually,
Maybe.
bigger in a way, because it's really an interplanetary story.
That's right.
Ultimately, and
That's what I love about Jim. He said, "Did I ever tell you about this other trilogy I came up with for the other planet?" He goes, "Hey, we can go real deep on this."
yeah, we
I'm
can.
like, wow.
Yeah, it just kind of opens up in
If you've
kind of
ever
fractal
read the
detail.
books,
Right?
you're like, it goes. You can't explain what happens in last order.
No.
It's like, nanobots. She's a butterfly. Just chill. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know.
It's just cool and beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, the thing about the books is that they're fresh, they're imaginative, they're cutting edge, they're beautiful, they're horrifying.
Yeah, oh
I
God,
mean, they're terrifying. You know, we can't go quite as far down that path in a PG-13 film as Kishiro goes.
Yeah.
You know, but we can allude to it.
Yeah.
But one of the great things too, one of my big thrills was when Kishiro came to visit the set.
Yeah. That's
And you know, he's a man of very few spoken words, incredible on the written page. And to see the smile on his face when he walked into Iron City, the world that he created, and how you guys in the designs held true to that on the page. And he did a wonderful message, Jim, that Robert Rose and I shared at Comic-Con on Friday, where he talked about how thrilled he was with everything he's seen. And I think
To see his character brought to life.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
No one ever shows up
Done
on a set
justice.
at a good time, right? You know, when people visit the set, it's always like a close-up of a teacup or something. He showed up right when there's a moment in the trailer that we just saw where she gets angry with Ito and smashes the table. He was there right when we shot that, so I was like, what the?
And it's a frame
Watch
from
the
the
one.
book. You could actually
frame from
find
the
that
book and-
frame
Yes.
in the-
I know. I colored it.
Yeah.
And when he walked in, I remember I ran right up to him and I wrapped my arms around his neck, and he was like, Alita. He was like, this is her, because that's her. She's just like, hi.
Yeah.
You know, she's this, but she's also this, but she's
Well,
also
see, this is the arc that you had to create, because as she recovers a sense of who she was and she gathers information about who she used to be, she goes from this carefree, very young, very
Doll-like girl,
open,
yeah.
curious, and loving spirit
Yes.
to something quite a bit darker.
Yes.
And she has to wrestle with that. She has to wrestle with the demon of her past. And I think that's what's amazing about the journey. And it also, the father-daughter love story, it's also very much, I think, about female empowerment and the difficulty of a father letting go of a daughter and letting her be who she is going to be, regardless of what that is. It has to be her vision of
and
her
she's
life.
going to be
She's gonna
who
do
she
it.
wants to be, who
Yeah.
she's meant to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get to play those roles all the time as a woman, and it was such a, I mean, but it's as universal to all people. I mean, we all feel insignificant. We can all feel like, you know, we don't have the ability to change anything. We can
Right.
all feel powerless. But I think what's beautiful about this story is that she goes on this journey and she discovers that she does have, and I think that that's the theme, you know, like we all have that ability. When we dig deep and we search within, we all have the ability to change our circumstances
Yeah.
and possibly the circumstances for a
Of
large
everybody,
group of
right,
people.
right.
So,
See,
yeah.
not only does she discover her power, which is vast,
Oh, yeah.
but she discovers her morality and her humanity,
yes.
and her humility as well.
And her heart.
Yeah.
So-
And
Her heart's so
heartbreak-
beautiful.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah.
She even shows it to us.
Yeah, she said, here it is. And that's, you know, that's very me. And so for you guys to pick up on that just from the room was yeah, I am very much
So in terms of
that
playing
way.
this character, fan site from Brazil wants to know,
Brazil.
what was the hardest scene in the film for you to do?
I mean, they were all brilliant. And even if they were challenging, I was pinching myself the whole time. We always joke, we're not gonna have anything left to pinch.
No, it's like for 3 years.
It's all
straight,
red
I'm
right
pinching
there.
my arm.
I guess the hardest scene for me, there were two. One is emotional, one is physical. You know, I'm not Alita. I am Alita, but in my real life, I'm not as. How could you possibly as strong
Nobody
as
could be as
her?
strong as
You know,
her,
no
right.
one can be. That's kind of the point. But there's a moment. This is the physical moment where she's, you know, she has to carry a whole body, and we had a full replica of that body, and Alita goes from a lot of down positions to straight up positions, and you know, I got my squats in on that one. And I pick up a whole body, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm picking up this whole body.
We'll just do a clip. You know, we'll do the
Yeah.
Alita Buns of Steel workout.
That's right. Down, pick up the body, up, pick up the body, down. But the scene where she leaves in the fit of teenage rage.
Yeah.
I mean,
Fine.
you know, the thing about my part of the job is that I feel everything. I feel everything. And we're talking about the father-daughter relationship.
Christoph was brilliant in that
He's
scene.
so brilliant.
He
He's
says
so
the most
still.
amazing thing you've ever heard, and he says it in a way that you utterly believe.
Yeah, like this is you know, he's reasoning.
He tells you what
And
you
you're
want.
like, he tells me what I am, and I'm just like, I want more. And he's like, you know, the limitations and what we're talking about, becoming yourself and fighting to become yourself. But it's with your father, you know, that relationship is very beautiful when it's beautiful. But when you're at odds, there's no one who can, there's nothing more devastating
He's trying
than
to
that.
hold you back.
Yeah, and
all you want to do is charge forward.
that's right.
So you talk about
So I
teenage-
cried a lot that day.
You talk about teenage rage. That is such a relatable characteristic for everybody. that
Oh,
we've
not
gone
for
through.
me, but yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Talk maybe, Jim and Robert, about the relatability of Alita's character, because I
That's
think
what I loved about when I first read Jim's script. I was like, I identify with everyone in this script. I identify with not just Christoph, Christoph's character having a daughter, because I have a daughter the same age, but also the Hugo character. And I identify with Alita, somebody who comes from, you know, some place where they feel like they're insignificant, or this place, I didn't come from the best place, and what can I possibly contribute to the world? And they find their true significance through that. That's a journey everybody can hear. That's a story you should hear today. And so I just found it very relatable, and what Jim made sense. Make it grounded, make it believable. We're gonna have so much flights of fancy throughout the movie. No one will buy it if it's not believable. So through the casting, to the way it's written, through the way the drama plays out, you've got to believe that you're there, and then you'll believe everything. And stick with the story. And
Which
that's,
doesn't sound unique, but it is unique
it's
when people
very
think
unique.
that
I
way.
mean, when you
Well,
gave
it's
me a
a-
180-page draft that I had to
Squeeze
shrink
down, yeah.
That was what drove it. That's where the pinpoint. That's what the.
I gave you a
the spirit
novel.
was
You
gonna
gave me a script.
Jim, not only did you give him a novel,
knew
but
how
you
to
gave him,
focus.
I think, like, how many pages
be.
of
600. Only some of the notes. 600 pages. of notes.
I edited it down from 1,200 to 600. I didn't want to overwhelm him.
Just so I could find.
No, it's a world.
And everything said the same thing. It all pointed towards the story and the characters and the relatability of it, which is essential in science fiction. Now that I've been to the Jim Cameron science fiction film school, that's really makes sense.
I wrote up a manual for how to, for like, you know,
How to be a cyborg.
How to be a cyborg. Like, because one day, you know,
I know.
you woke up in a machine body,
right.
and it's like, all right, well, how does this work?
Everything
You know?
from how her body works, what her body is made of, how she feels, how she might feel, and to quotes, to a little backstory. I mean, I said, does Jim have any notes? I got a 5-page, I call it the 5-page declaration of Alita. And it was immensely helpful to know what to know what I am.
Right.
You told me what I am. You're my Ito.
Think about,
know?
you know, when you think about Jim's movies, that's what he does in everything. You know, everything
right.
is relatable. Everything, no matter how out there the idea is, he finds a way to make it relatable, and that's where I think others can get lost in the
You got that.
technical
You
soup.
got that because you're
right.
cutting down 180 pages down to 129 pages, but you kept her eating a piece of chocolate and falling in love with chocolate.
Right, right.
You kept her eating an orange for the first time and not knowing to take the peel off and getting a look on her face. It told you so much in that one moment. She's never seen an orange. She doesn't know what it's called.
Everything is new.
Right? And she doesn't know to take the peel off. And even though she has a machine body, she has taste receptors so that when she bites through the orange from the outside, this is I'm not giving away a big spoiler here, this is in like minute 2. Her face wrinkles up and you realize, well, she may have a synthetic body, but she's got a human brain, and the technology of the day allows her to have taste receptors and touch receptors and everything else. So she's very, very human. She's
right.
just kind of alt body.
That was
human,
the other thing
you
that
know.
made it relatable, is that you made sure, because in cyborgs in the Terminator films didn't have human brains.
No.
But in this, cyborgs do, because any advanced AI is outlawed in Iron City. So everyone has a human organic brain, which makes even somebody who is made up of high-tech bodywear is relatable because they have a human brain.
And guns are outlawed, which means that everything falls back into a kind of a martial arts kind of metaphor.
Combat
and they can
style,
have swords, and they can have other weapons, edge weapons, and so on, but no guns. So it's kind of the anti-Terminator movie.
That's right.
Terminator movies are gun movies. This is the opposite.
All right, so we have this relatable character, and a question from Zoe from China.
Zoe.
What is the one
Yo,
area that took the most effort to actually bring Alita to life?
The one thing that made Alita the hardest.
The hardest thing to bring her to life.
Well, what blew me away from the very beginning, when I first asked Jim about this project, and he showed me, behind the curtain, and showed me early art that he did for the version he was going to do back in 2005. You were going to attempt this,
Right.
Which we barely had the technology
Tech
to do it
now. I know.
But Jim was always pushing technology. He knew that the art had to push it. Was the artwork he had, and you saw Alita with the ivory body, and with the anime eyes, and it was just so striking. I thought, we got to do that. If we were going to do that in 2005, we have to do that now, for sure. We've never seen it photoreal before. We've seen manga and anime since Astro Boy in the 30s, but we've never seen it photoreal. It would be such a great journey to take the audience into that world for the very first time. So to nail the look of Alita was the thing that Jim had already gotten really far on back in 2005, and then we just kept building on and constantly refining. And Jim knows eyes better than anyone. What makes them come to life? Just from all the work that we benefited so much from the work you did on Avatar.
The irony is we cast
I know
a young actor with the most amazing, big, brown, beautiful eyes in Hollywood.
Thank you.
And then we went, we can't have those little tiny eyes. We have to have giant eyes.
My mom goes, they look the same.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
So
I enhanced them.
I think we have time for one more last question, and I'm going to ask it of each one of you. So we'll start with Rose. It's the same question. Love to know from each one of you, what would you say the film is ultimately about?
Well, for me, for my part of it, I would say the film is about looking inward, discovery, and in that being vulnerable enough to do that. I mean, you have to be a brave person to challenge yourself in that way. External things are kind of easy to understand. I mean, it's right there, and there's explanations attached to them. But what's going on inside is the real universe. I mean, the real universe, the real infinity is within. And I would say that it is essentially about people, and in particular one girl who is trying to discover and understand her own infinity.
Robert?
Beautiful.
That was excellent.
Oh, we're done. We're done.
We're done with that. The character of Alita is fascinating. She doesn't remember a lot coming into the world. She's forgotten a lot due to whatever accident she had gotten through. And it shows that you couldn't pretty much get through life not having to remember a whole lot. And if there's one thing you should never forget is your humanity. If that's the one thing you should always hold on to. If you're going to forget anything, don't forget that. And that's what my biggest takeaway from the story was.
I always saw it as a story of personal empowerment for a young girl. I wrote it at the time when my daughter was 13, I think. And, I saw it as, women often have a hard time finding their voice in a male-dominated world.
Harnessing their power.
Yeah, exactly. And learning to trust yourself and have confidence and deal with your own strength. And sometimes that strength can be almost out of control. And find your own kind of moral compass within that, you know, and maintain the relationships with the people around you, even while you're struggling with your own identity. I don't think it's exclusively a female thing. I think every teenager goes through this. It's about teen angst in the sense of, who am I? What's my role in the world? What am I here to do? You know? And,
why am I here?
Yeah, and how much do I have to break away from my parents to become that thing, and how much do I still honor them and what they've given me, you know? So, you know, it's a very human story. It's just told in a very different world with very different kinds of people. But I think, you know, it's about the universe. I think science fiction works best, and you were talking about this before, when, first of all, it's in the details, and secondly, it's about the universality of the kind of experience that people have. And I know we're wrapping up, and I know that was the last question. I just want to say here, in front of the world, the people that are leaning forward.
I'll marry you. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm married. How proud I am to have gotten to work and play in this creative sandbox with both of you guys.
Same with you, my gosh, and you and John. What a dream this has been.
And you too, buddy.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Jim needs to get back to the Avatar sequels. Robert needs to get back to finishing the movie so we could share it with everybody who's out there waiting. But I really want to thank Robert, Rosa, Jim for the time. And most importantly, though, I want to thank you, the fans, for tuning in, whichever way you're watching today. It means a lot to us. We cannot wait to share the whole movie with you this December.